He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is The Alex Marlow Show.
Welcome to The Alex Marlow Show. I am Alex Marlow, the host of The Alex Marlow Show, the one and only. Keep saying your name over and over again, and people will internalize it. You'll love it. We've got an interview show today. I just taped the last couple of days with Jack Posobiec and Charlie Kirk, two of the biggest personalities in the conservative new media space, both of whom are contemporaries of mine, and we've done collaborations together. But it's rare that I can pin them down for interviews because they're creating so much of their own content day to day. And we get into a lot of stuff. We get into the state of the MAGA movement, the Epstein files, of course, the buzz at the Student Action Summit from over the weekend in Tampa, Charlie Kirk's big event. We talk about some family stuff. It's good. These are interesting guys, and it's always nice to catch up with them. But before we get to those interviews, I will bring up two big news items. The first one is a lot of movement on the economic front today. We got some, this is the subject, by the way, of my Breitbart Confidential interview with John Carney for Breitbart Fight Club members. You can get more there. But producer price index numbers showing no inflation in June. And this is amazing because I woke up to a headline in the Wall Street Journal this morning saying that Trump's policies are causing inflation. Well, you get stuff like egg prices are down, goods prices are up slightly, but service prices are down. And we are just not seeing any inflation in June. And it continues to be overstated by the media where there is evidence of inflation, and understated all of the parts of the economy which are not seeing any inflation, or maybe even seeing some light deflation, perhaps. It's just amazing to watch the media operate, how they consistently downplayed the Joe Biden inflation as transitory, and the Donald Trump inflation, which is non-existent, is being discussed if it's a major story. That's only part one, though, of the big economic news. The Trump-Jerome Powell war has intensified, apparently. The New York Times reported earlier today that Trump drafted a letter to fire the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell and asked Republicans if he should do it. Trump has come out and denied this, but I don't know. It feels like a lot of art of the deal stuff. I don't know exactly what to believe, but President Trump is frustrated with interest rates being as high as they are. I think he's got good reason to do it. I think there's a lot of evidence that now is the time to cut rates. Rates should be lower, and because of a number of reasons, but most importantly, it would jumpstart the economy. I mean, from a government perspective, when rates are high, the federal government pays more on interest rates, and just the way it is. So, of course, Trump would like it lower for that reason. But also, I think a lot of people in Trump's base, his movement, are feeling the pinch from inflation. We're a debtor economy. People are borrow up to their eyeballs. And when they are paying massive amounts in interest rates, that is not expanding the economy the same way it would if it was going into the economy. So he wants people out there shopping and spending and building and growing. And all of that helps when the rates are lower. The other thing is that with housing, even though sometimes lower interest rates can lead to housing inflation, but it also means that there's turnover in the economy, because a lot of people, when the rates are high, feel trapped and they can't sell their house even if they want to downgrade. And we have a lot more detail on this with Carney, but overall, there's a lot of evidence to suggest it's time to cut rates. I think Powell's going to do it. The question is when, and whether or not Trump's aggressive tactics work. I mentioned this last week. Dan Bongino comes out allegedly and says, you got to fire Pam Bondi or me. And I thought the second he said that to Trump, now Bondi's not getting fired, because if that's really what happened, Trump is not going to get out alphaed even by a supreme masculine figure like Dan Bongino. There's no way Trump was going to go along with that. Again, I don't even know if that story is literally true, but if it is, I knew Trump wouldn't fire Bondi. And he hasn't thus far. Or at least he wouldn't right away. And this is a very similar thing that I'm wondering if Trump continuing to amp up the pressure on Jerome Powell to create this level of conflict, I wonder if Powell's going to have to dig in. He should not dig in. He should not be emotional. He should be independent, and he should do what he thinks is best. That's the job that he was appointed to do. But the question is, will Trump fire him, and can he fire him? And that's a question we've never tested. We do not know constitutionally if Trump can fire the Federal Reserve Chair, and I've got great legal sources. You might be aware, got a book coming out soon, Breaking the Law, and I have not gotten a clear answer. And this will have to get worked out in the courts if Trump tries to do it. So it'll be a big headache for Trump because Powell's term is up next year. So Trump will get a new pick for the Federal Reserve next year. And if he tries to fire Powell, then what happens as it inevitably appealed, because it's unclear whether or not the Federal Reserve Chair works for the president. There's one big story earlier in the week I didn't get around to talking to, but the Supreme Court ruling that Trump can basically dismantle the Department of Education. It's terrific news, amazing news, but not just for the Department of Education, which needs to go away and should go away, but even better, it shows that Trump controls his own executive branch. He controls the bureaucracy. So the Department of Education secretary is essentially Donald Trump first, and the undersecretary is whoever gets the secretary title. And that's how it should be. That's with these bureaucratic agencies. The president should be in charge, and he should be able to hire and fire whoever he pleases. And that is the nature of our electoral system, is that we elect the president to run the executive branch. So I think that's great news that we got from the courts. That said, the Federal Reserve does not necessarily fall under that roof. So it'll be interesting to see if Trump goes through the headache and test this. I don't know if he will, but it is unclear whether or not Trump can fire Powell. He is clearly doing art of the deal, putting immense pressure on Trump. That's the name of the game. I do not know how effective it will be for Trump. I don't, but it could backfire. It could work. It could be a firing. The firing might not hold, but overall, he just wants those rates down, and I don't blame him, and I'm with him on it. Okay, so that's it on economic news for now. More again at Breitbart.com and on Fight Club. I will say another big one, Epstein developing, and we got a huge Trump quote. It's so long, I won't do the Trump voice, I don't think. Normally I like to do the Trump voice when I'm reading from President Trump, but he put out a big statement on Epstein. I'll break this down for you. And this will be very interesting as Epstein comes up in both of the interviews I'm about to play. But this is really interesting context. The radical left Democrats have hit pay dirt again. Just like with the fake and fully discredited Steele dossier, the lying 51 intelligence agents, the laptop from hell, which the Dems swore had come from Russia. No, it came from Hunter Biden's bathroom. And even the Russia scam itself, a totally fake and made up story in order to hide crooked Hillary Clinton's big loss in the 2016 election. These scams and hoaxes are all Democrats are good at. It's all they have. They are no good at governing, no good at policy, and no good at picking winning candidates. It's a very long sentence. It's a long preamble. And the whole point is he's citing all of these things that the left and the Democrats and the media got wrong, all these hoaxes. And so let's see where he goes with it. Also, unlike Republicans, they stick together like glue. This is a great point. It's a point I make as often as any point I make. The left is much better at keeping their coalitions together than we are. Their new scam is what we will forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. And my past supporters have bought into this bullshit hook, line, and sinker. Really noteworthy here that he capitalizes past supporters. So he's saying if you're buying into the Jeffrey Epstein story, it's a hoax, it's a scam, and you are no longer my supporters. You're my past supporters. So all the top conservative influencers pretty much across the board, with notable exceptions who are in a middle ground, I would put myself in that group. But all of the major Republican voices online have demanded the release of Epstein files and more transparency from Trump's government on this across the board. A handful of exceptions, Dinesh D'Souza, I think Ben Shapiro, a couple others have tried to find some ground that's a little bit more forgiving. I'm certainly in that group of the Trump government, but overall, everyone has wanted more answers than we've got. And some of the biggest online fixtures have been incredibly vocal about it. And Trump is going out and saying these are past supporters who have bought into a bullshit hoax. They haven't learned their lesson. They probably never will, even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years. I have had more success in 6 months than perhaps any president in our country's history. And all these people want to talk about with strong prodding by the fake news and the success-starved Dems is the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. So he's saying, let's come back to all the winning we're doing. Let's talk about that. Why are we spending so much time on Epstein? Let's talk about some of the successes that I've had. He's cutting deals left and right every day. Seems like a new trade deal, new mineral deal, a new reshoring, more manufacturing, more jobs coming back. That's getting pushed off the front page for the Epstein stuff. I'll tell you, he's not wrong about this in the sense that the left knows that they've got us over a barrel in this one. Okay, let's read the rest of the quote. Let these weaklings continue forward and do the Democrats' work. Don't even think about talking of our incredible and unprecedented successes because I don't want their support anymore. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. It's compelling. Look, I'm kind of with him. I am. I'm with him on this. I don't feel like we're going to get the answers we want. And I'm so sympathetic to all of you in the audience, some of my most loyal supporters and readers of Breitbart and listeners of the show. This is your issue. This is your number one thing. On Charlie's show today, Charlie had a very, very important point, which he's saying that the people who are animated by Epstein believe that the same people behind Jeffrey Epstein, the people who helped fund him, who helped protect him, who helped him build out his network, were the exact people behind all of the scams that Trump lays out, from the election meddling and the attempted assassination. They think that is the cabal that was behind Epstein was behind all that other nefarious stuff to take out Trump. That's the argument. I think it's a totally valid position. But unfortunately, to this point, it's kind of rooted in the theoretical, the ephemeral, the fleeting, the fairy dust. We've not seen enough to directly link, for sure, Epstein to these networks. And if the government is not going to cooperate and play ball, then it might make sense to move on. Now, do I think that there are clearly people who've evaded and avoided justice at this point? Yes, I do. And do I want them to be held accountable? Yes. Do I want Pam Bondi to not lead us on again like this? Yes. Do I feel like there's got to be more that they can release? Yes, of course. And I hope they do. But I'm feeling that it's getting pretty unproductive because Trump does not want to fire these people. He wants to focus on his successes. He doesn't feel like he's on his back foot. He feels like he's on his front foot. He's on the balls of his feet. And he doesn't want to do this anymore. So I find this very interesting because he's really going hard against his most loyal supporters here. And let's see what they do. Is it Trump's movement or is it the online rights movement? Because the online right is universal on this. We need more information. Heads need to roll. People in Trump's government need to do more to tell the truth. Trump is saying it's all a scam. It's a hoax. There's nothing big that we're holding back, and it's time to move on and focus on the victories. So I'm really compelled to see what happens next year because Trump's making a big bet, and I don't blame him. Because I don't think I don't think more is coming out realistically. I want it to come out, but I just don't think we're going to get it. So Trump's saying, hey, how much time am I going to spend in this thing? We did what we can, and we're moving on for now. There was a interesting point that some people had raised that perhaps there could be some sort of a special counsel, some sort of investigation, something impaneled to look into this. And I'm good with that because I give Trump some distance and maybe we can get a more satisfying answer. But I got to tell you, we're just delaying not getting a satisfying answer. That's my guess, is that we're not going to get satisfaction, whether it be that there is widespread cover up from within the government or whether or not it is just impossible to release certain information given how many innocent lives, particularly of children or young people, would be affected, or some combination thereof. I've never thought we we're going to get much, and that position is unfortunately looking good. I wish we got more. I wish I was wrong on this. I wish we got full transparency from the government and maybe some sort of a special counsel to look into it is the way to go. And sure, yeah, I'd love to see it happen. I think that would make sense. But let's see if it does. So, all right, that's the big thing, and I did want to bring that to everyone's attention before we dove in on these interviews. But those two stories that are developing now are very exciting, and as always, we will have more for you at Breitbart.com. But calling the attacks a hoax. So Alan Dershowitz, by the way, said there's no client list. So it's the you can take his opinion with a grain of salt, but it is what was the list, who made the list, who was on the list, how important were the people on the list. There was a list. What did they do? Were they people who Epstein managed their money, or they went with him to the island, or they actually preyed upon the girls? We don't even know. And there's so many questions, so many things need answers, and we should keep trying to find answers to them, but we can't only do this. Clearly, the Democrats love it that this is our main topic of conversation, and that's not really great for us at the moment. Got to be real about that. All right, let's get into it with Jack Posobiec and Charlie Kirk right now. Here are my exclusive interviews with those great guys. All right, we know that good coffee is kind of easy to find. There's a lot of good coffee out there, but great coffee, that's a different story. And when I was introduced to Crockett Coffee, I knew this was something special. This is roasted to perfection in small batches on purpose by experts who love the taste of great coffee and are conscientious about how it's made and who's making it. It's roasted in our nation's heartland and it's delivered fresh to your home. When you enjoy Crockett Coffee, you're also supporting an anti-communist, pro-American brand of coffee founded by our friends Clay Travis and Buck Sexton, who are good broadcasters and are apparently dang good at making a cup of coffee as well. The perfect type of thing to sip at a mountain campfire like a Western settler, or in your office while you're doing a podcast. It is just really high quality stuff. You guys know I'm a coffee snob, married to an Italian. I like to hit that dark roast. They also sent me some mild roast, which was delicious. They got a light roast. They got a decaf. They got a mushroom organic blend. That's the new hotness. They got K-Cups. Lots of different options for you. And part of your support goes to Tunnel to Towers Foundation, which is a great way to give back and remind people that Crockett Coffee, people there, they pledge to never forget. Easy. Go online, crockettcoffee.com. Crockett like it as in Davy Crockett. crockettcoffee.com. Use my first name, Alex. You get 20% off your first order. That's crockettcoffee.com. Use my name, Alex, as the promo code for 20% off. Good people and a dang good cup of coffee. You guys know I would not endorse it if it wasn't quite delightful.
I just got off stage and you're going on stage, and I was thinking about this. It's kind of amazing how much winning we're doing. And you were in the trenches early for MAGA over 10 years ago. One of the original people, like us at Breitbart. And it feels like we're fighting with ourselves a little bit right now. And do you think it's just for fun, or do you think that there's something more serious here in terms of a rift in the coalition? Because we're doing very well. There's some problems, and we need to sort those out. But I want it to be a party in this environment. Is it a party, or are we nervous?
Well, so there's the nomenclature is important here, because there's, as you say, there's MAGA, that's sort of the OG MAGA. But what happened in 2024 was a ballooning of MAGA, and MAGA spread out to pick up new coalitions that never were on board before. So one aspect, which is great, which of course, politically speaking, obviously that's what you want. You want politics as addition, not subtraction. So MAGA expands to bring in, of course, MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. So Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, I kind of put in that camp as well, because she's sort of
the viral workout videos,
very close
great.
with Bobby, etc. The anti-war left then comes on as well. So the anti-war, movement is a huge part of that. That's like the Scott Horton types, Dave Smith types. Like that was very much part of the coalition in 2024. Then you also have and that's also gets you into libertarian world. So now libertarians, Russ Ulbricht, who is speaking here today, by the way. So these are all different buckets that Trump was able to go to in 2024 to drive out votes. First time you ever had a Republican presidential candidate speak at a libertarian convention, and he took a lot of crap, by the way, from that audience. But I think the voters really saw that as well. And you can go down the line for various groups that he was able to put together to put that coalition in. Now we're in what I think is really a classic symptom or a classic after effect of when coalitions take power. You see this in Europe all the time, by the way, because they need coalition governments to be able to form, since they have the multi-party democracies, where you have different aspects of the coalition rack and stack their priorities different than other members of the coalition. And this, of course, is the challenge for President Trump. You go to the immigration hardliners, which I'm on board 100%, and we'll say immigration is the number one issue. But then you might go to the hawks and they say no, Iran and the nuclear program is the hardline issue. And then you go to the truthers and the libertarians, they say no, Epstein is the number one issue. And so when you're the president, you only have so much political resource and political capital that you can expend at one time or another. And I think that is the pressure and the tension that you're seeing right now.
Yeah, and this is where the left has been so good, is that they have these buckets of coalitions, and they've been able to move them around effortlessly for decades, and that's been their edge. And we've always been very libertarian at our core, where we love a great individual, we love a great family. That's what we think about. And so those are harder to move because you're moving people like 1 vote at a time, 4 votes at a time. The left moves thousands or millions of votes at a time. And we do have to be very cautious of this. So that the obvious follow-up is the Epstein stuff. Contextualize why.
By the way, can I
please.
So, and there was that study that came out recently talking about diversity of voices, and it showed the heat map of this. And on the left, it was like a closed fist, and on the right, it was just this open cloud of different voices. And I said, that's exactly what it's like. Now, what you're talking about, though, it's so important for people to understand. So yeah, we can celebrate the fact that we have a diversity of voices, but you also can't forget, though, that politically, this is much more beneficial for the left, because they're able to just move in lockstep all the time. They're totally committed. And then even when you get guys like Eric Adams or Cuomo who try to walk out of that, they'll throw you right aside. And then Mondami walks right in and says, this guy, this is what we want, because he's right in the middle of where the coalition is, where our leftist force is, so we'll go along with that. So when this is a total difference of the way the politics works on either side. They're committed to their vision of what they want the world to be. I personally think it's crazy. I think history proves that it's crazy, but they're certainly committed to it, and there's no question about that. But on the right, as we've been talking about, you do have this vast majority of, or I would say pluralities of different opinions on really what we want and where we want the country to go, but a general agreement on people like Trump or various figures. J.D. Vance does a good job of really being able to work different coalitions together. J.D. Vance is great because he's like, there are so many Americans within J.D. Vance, right? He's a working class guy, but he's also a Yale guy. He's a military guy.
He's a guy
who's a VC guy.
Right, and he's not a hawk, but he's also...
He's not a hawk, but he's the military. Right, so he's got all these different Americans.
He was so essential with the Iran bombing messaging, because his messaging was so on point, which is, this is not World War III. This is a surgical, strategic, one-off strike, taking out a target that we've thought about forever, and then we're done. And he's the only guy with credibility to say that. No one else can say that.
Right.
Because if anyone else said that, we'd be like, it's just deep state again. It's just the stuff that we'd all feared. But he was able to kind of thread that needle, which is nice.
He was absolutely crucial in that moment. And for people who say, oh, JD's on the out, he's never been more on the in than he is now, because that showed his value to the administration, that his credibility with the base and his credibility, even, by the way, with the media, which, I don't know if he gets as much credit for that as he does, but they know that this is a guy whose word is really something you can take and absolutely put it to the bank. Now, to your other question, that's something that Pam Bondi has found an issue with lately, given her credibility.
And let me set this up about your credibility, Jack, because on the online social media warrior front, you and Cernovich are the original two. You guys have been there from day one. The MAGA people writing, headwinds, tailwinds, whatever it is, you've always been there. So explain to us why that movement, your core audience, is so upset about what's going on, because I don't think some people totally get it that aren't totally locked in.
No, I think you're right. And look, I would really encourage any of those people, just come to one of these events, come to a Turning Point, come to a rally, come to a CPAC, whatever it is, and meet the base, meet them and listen to them and listen to what they care about. They say, why do you care so much about Epstein for? And it's not that they care about Epstein personally, right? It's that they care that there's this optic that Epstein was somehow involved with a shadowy system that actually has control over our government, over control over our institutions, over control of our lives, and really is in a ruling power over us. MAGA has always been an anti-establishment movement, period, full stop. And so when you sit there and say, as Pam Bondi did, and even when she brought me personally into the White House and hands me this stack of files and says, hey, this is going to be phase 1, and next we're going to see phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4 and all the rest of it, and tells people, guess what? This is going to be the roadmap to how your government actually operates and how these systems of power are orchestrated behind the scenes, which I think everyone in MAGA, everyone, 100% believe that's the way the world works. And then they say, and then for her to turn around after saying all of these things and conducting all of the events, one of which I inadvertently became part. I didn't even know we were going to talk about Epstein when we went in that day, and Cernovich as well, sitting right next to me, and suddenly there is no 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is what erupted in this massive backlash from the audience, from the average voter, the people out there saying, wait a minute, we were promised truth, we were promised accountability, we were promised justice. Look, we're not trying to go after the victims. Nobody's trying to go after the victims. People want justice for the victims, but more to the point, there's this general sort of feeling that this guy was somehow involved in the tapestry of these power players, which, by the way, look at some of the names on the list. Bill Gates, who is the guy that was on TV every day selling COVID to you and selling vaccines and selling lockdowns to you. And suddenly this guy is tied to Epstein, and it just paints a picture in people's minds about what's really going on, quote unquote. That's what people want justice for. So it ties to COVID, it ties to lockdowns, it ties to vaccines, it ties to so many different buckets of the anger people are feeling because they looked at a government for so many years that just seemed totally out of touch with what the average American citizen was experiencing.
There's something ironic about what's going on with it because it's such a messaging failure. And
it is.
Trump is a genius messaging guy. I was just praising JD's messaging. There's so many great messengers in the movement and in the administration, and then just kind of go out there and just tease everyone that we're going to get answers. I think that was really a huge mistake because we were all under the impression we were finally going to get some info that was hardcore, and then we got nothing. I think that's really a cardinal sin.
No, it absolutely is, and I do put that, I saw that mainly coming from Pam Bondi more than the president himself. Actually, he did visit that room while we were in there, but that was sort of a, hi, how are you? I don't even think he knew that, any of this was going on. And he did, it was so gracious, brought us into the Oval, all the rest of it, but never once did we hear or discuss with him anything regarding Jeffrey Epstein. Because this whole thing was supposed to be just a meet and greet, a series of policy briefings, JD was there as well, but we never talked about Epstein. It was Pam Bondi and her office that was really driving the train on all of this, which, okay, fine. If we're going to do that, let's do it. Let's do it the right way. Let's do it the real way. And I think it's something where that, look, when you're the president, you have to govern, and you have to govern the whole country. There's so many issues going on, all of a sudden you're dealing with a nuclear program in Iran, then suddenly there's a flood down in Texas you have to go deal with, and he's not really holding the rallies the way that he used to. He's not doing podcasts the way that he used to, and I think that it's because, I don't blame him for this. I think it's just part of the realities of the job that you're going to be pulled and stretched in a million different directions that possibly that signal doesn't get where it needs to go.
Exactly, and there's so many different audiences to hit, and they did such an amazing job hitting every one of them on the campaign. Those people need to be talked to right now, I think. So you're about to go on stage. What's the core message to this audience, as a base audience, people who are in tune with everything? What are you saying to them?
Look, and it's as simple as this, is that we are a base that cares about America. We are people that care about America. We put America first. So we are not, what the media says, a cult of personality. We are not a bunch of people who just, kiss the ground that Donald Trump walks on. No, we care about real issues. We put immigration first and foremost. We put accountability first and foremost. These are foundational issues for MAGA. Remember, this was the original sales proposition for Donald Trump. Dave Chappelle talked about it on SNL. Donald Trump was the man who came out from behind the closed door and said, you know what? Those guys are screwing you. How do I know? Because I was one of them.
I was one too.
Right? And that's what gave him his original credibility all those years ago. And so people are waiting, and I think rightly so, and through no fault of their own, for these answers and for real justice to be done. And people should never stop asking for those questions and never stop putting pressure. And look, MAGA, it's just a MAGA fight club. We've been fighting since day one, since the day of the escalator, and we're not going to stop.
No, and it's fine. It's all fine.
And it's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. We're going to work it all out, and we should have a good time while we're doing it.
Yeah, look, MAGA's a family, and look, every family's got family drama, so okay, it's a little family drama, but we're still a family.
Yeah, no, I think most of our movement leaders get it, which I'm very relieved about, so don't be too concerned. Jack Posobiec, Human Events Daily. Everyone should check out Jack's show. It's terrific, Real America's Voice and podcast, and everyone already follows you on Twitter anyway, so thanks,
Once
Jack.
in a while, appreciate
it. I scripted more of my speech than usual this time. And
I missed it. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sure. You're a busy guy. But it's funny because I had 2 minutes to filibuster. And the first thing I thought of was I'm going to tell Charlie's origin story about how you came to Breitbart News with an idea for a story, and we said, you handle it. You be the citizen journalist, you write it up, you be the one who puts yourself out there. And that was the beginning of an amazing meteoric rise for you. But I think it does speak to the core of what you're trying to do at the summit, which is get people inspired to get involved at some level, and you never know in this country.
Look, we are all inheritors of the legacy of Andrew Breitbart. I never met him, and I'm an effusive promoter of the legacy of Andrew. But here was this grassroots warrior that had no pretensions. He'd be walking Media Row right now, just like sitting on tables, taking selfies. Could you imagine, right?
I know.
And you kind of think of the legends of the last couple of decades that built this MAGA coalition where we're winning popular vote majorities, electoral vote majorities. The country's with us. I would have to probably point out a couple names. Obviously Trump, Breitbart, Limbaugh.
Yeah.
Those would be my big three.
Yeah.
Right? The big three that really got us to this moment. And they all played a different role. Rush was that daily drumbeat, setting the tone, casting the vision, analyzing, interpreting, understanding. But Andrew did something different. He inspired, and most of these kids wouldn't even know the name Andrew Breitbart, they know the brand Breitbart, but he inspired a different way of challenging people in authority. Grassroots. You have a phone in your right-hand pocket. Use it. Record it. You can be the change in the world.
Yeah, and he imbued that populism in terms of that we all have to be responsible for ourselves and our role in the movement. That's right. And I know that that's kind of how you're reaching people here, is that you want everyone to play their own role, and you want them to have communal gathering places, which is why it's great.
So important. These events are so important. Some people say, oh, it's just an event. I said, just an event. The training, the connections, the future marriages, the friendships. The people come here from liberal New York and they're fired up to come back and fight. These events are life changers.
So I think the family element is key. I know that's you're adding that to your messaging a lot, and you saying come here and meet your soulmate at the event. I've loved this because it does feel like we've got to get the world out of this mindset where your 20s is dedicated to the corporation and is not to family formation. Summarize what you've been saying.
Yeah, look, as a father and as a husband, I can tell you the most important thing in my life is first God and then family. It's not career, it's not even all of this. And so and I've had a great amount of financial success. The show's doing incredible. But so I think to myself, what kind of advice do I want to give a young kid that's 23? I want them to know the most important thing is not the bank account. It's not the title at some shoe company.
Yeah.
It's things that will last. It is passing down your values. That's what actually matters. And so far too often, we as conservatives, the last decade, we got into the corporatization of American conservatism, which is that it was all about economic growth, it was all about GDP numbers, and that's fine. We want that. I don't want to be poor. It's important, but that's not everything. And we were led to believe by the corporatization and the libertarian elements of the Republican Party, some of which were terrific, some of which were awful, some of which were just corrosive and terrible, that everything was about stuff.
Yes.
That as long as you have cheap stuff, everything will be happy. We are now realigning and saying, no, we actually have a crisis of purpose. God, religion, church, children, community. And I think that we as conservatives actually have more staying power as a movement. We talk about things that actually matter.
Now, when you talk about did you have a good day, is it always when you closed a deal, or is it when you did something meaningful that day?
That's right.
It's the meaning of life.
Correct.
Is it finding a meaningful
life? It's all Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl saw this whole thing coming.
He really did. So we're at a moment in the movement where we're starting to debate, a little bit of infighting. I think it's more friendly than it's being portrayed sometimes online. But talk to us about this sensitivity that we have in terms of our coalition. The MAGA coalition is broad, and there's a lot of new factions in it. And one of the ways the left has beat us over the last decade plus is they move their coalitions more easily than we do. We move individuals, we move families, but we haven't had this task of moving these broad coalitions, keeping them unified. This is a new challenge for us. You're a movement leader. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, it's a new challenge because also it is a challenge of success. When you win a popular vote majority, you have all these coalitions. And the president, he intentionally had to build unique coalitions because he was iced out because of the lawfare from a traditional Republican voting bloc.
Right.
So he had to be like, okay, if high prop voters there's no guarantee they're going to be with me, I got to go build these different pieces. So 3 that come to mind, outside of just the mainline Trump stuff, which was blue collar, that's obvious, right? That's easy. But 3 new ones. The first was kind of the libertarian crypto bros that are very big into transparency, and they are very distrustful of government. We'll get to that in a minute. MAGA, I think MAGA's actually been the coalition that has stayed together the best, delivering on their promises. They're happy, they're unified, they're goal-driven. Bobby Kennedy is crushing it at HHS.
Sure.
And then the third of which is just like general young people that have economic anxieties. President Trump was able to win the youth vote in Michigan, win it in so many other states. So then you kind of go to that first category. That's where the Epstein thing comes in. And that's where, I spoke to the president privately and publicly. I'm saying the same thing, like it's not a private conversation. The young people you won over that gave you that extra 1% to 2%, that kind of low prop guys that, go to bed at 4 a.m. and are trading crypto coins, and buying Dogecoin, they really are distrustful of the federal government. And the Epstein thing doesn't matter as much as it does in detail as it does in concept.
That's correct.
As it does in what it represents. And that's where I think it needs to be an understanding. I'm not an Epstein guy, meaning people have created their whole career talking about this stuff. I think I've talked about Epstein 3 times on my show, and I do 3 hours a day, I'm speaking. It's not that interesting to me.
Yeah.
I guess I've become more interested in it in the last couple of days because people have reminded me all the elements. But my role is from the political project and keeping the coalition together.
Yeah.
Be like, guys, do I think this will end MAGA? No. Do I think that we have a chance of 10 to 15% of our young men becoming the MAGA lost boys? Yes.
Right.
I think they could just disappear. And that would be tragic.
And we can't lose those numbers. So what's your recommendation on steps that we can take in the next, year plus until the next midterm to keep people organized and cohesive?
First on the Epstein thing, this is all public, but I think that something's got to be done with these grand jury testimony, something with unsealing. We got to try to move on this stuff, right? Secondly, I don't know what it was about Acosta, but Acosta came out and said that Epstein was a foreign intel asset.
Yes.
Figure it out. Ask him. He was a former Trump,
Sure,
a cabinet appointee.
Yeah.
Let's figure it out. And the final thing is silence is like nature abhors a vacuum, and MAGA abhors silence.
Yes.
And a week of we're going to leak something to Axios on Sunday night. We're going to wait all week. I was very restrained all week. I didn't want to talk about it. I was like, guys, we have deportations, fight with our cities. People are shooting at ICE officers. But the audience was like, no, this is huge. And I get it. And I don't want to ignore the audience. And especially when I think they're onto something, because the silence, what the problem was that the administration was not leading and leaning into it. They should have done a 3-hour press conference. Bondi, Blanche, Cash, Bongino, any question, only for new media. Yes. They should have done a new media. So they should have had Charlie Kirkshaw, Megyn Kelly, Alex Marlow, Steve Bannon, Jack Posobiec, no CNN. Could you imagine a new media? Because by the way, the legacy media doesn't care about this. You know how I know? They had 10 chances of reporters, President Trump going to Texas at the Sticks. They didn't ask about Epstein once. So this is a whole new media MAGA thing. So anyway, I think that hopefully will thoroughly answer your question on that.
Your idea is so good. I thought of this when I was talking to Jack Posobiec earlier. They need to provide the podcast strategy. They got to do it.
By the way, the regime media doesn't care about the story.
Yeah.
They're not carrying it. The only portion they're saying is MAGA's divided. They're not actually carrying the core elements of it. So the solution is forget them. They're a waste of time. Do a new media press conference. Just invite the people whose audience actually cares about it.
Yeah.
And then the final thing, is that I think that at least on that coalitional element. Again, I don't know the answers to this. I'm not going to speculate. And if it's boring, great. I also think that there's an element of James Comey's involvement in this, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
And then that's an attack vector. His daughter was the lead prosecutor in SDNY. He was FBI director when that weird investigation happened in 2007. I think he was FBI director in 2007. Either that or was Mueller, where that was botched so terribly. So this is a lot of an inherited problem.
That's right.
And so I think you got to be aggressive, you got to be forthright, you got to be offensive on that. And then to your broader question, keeping the coalition together, look, we need mass deportations. That's the other thing. So the other part of all this is any sort of the whispers of amnesty, that dog's not going to hunt.
Yeah.
That affects your high prop voters. That's a different problem. So Epstein is a low prop problem.
Yes.
Do you want to keep the young MAGA men around? Is that for me? I'm of course, those are my guys. Those are my guys on college campuses that are asking me to sign their ZINs, right? That are voting for the first time.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose them.
Well, look,
but amnesty's a different question.
And Breitbart, we're Fight Club. We love taking on all sides. But overall, I want to get your grade for the administration the first 6 months, because I know what mine is, but I want to hear what yours is.
Of course it's an A, right?
Yeah.
But I would say that the biggest points of improvement would definitely be this Epstein thing on the communication standpoint is no good. I've said that repeatedly, and it's got to be improved. And I think that the big beautiful bill is phenomenal.
Me too.
I think we have to have at least a broader, clearer picture of where we're going to cut spending and what that looks like. Because I am a debt and deficit hawk, I remain that. I actually think they matter. But I think it's an A. I think they're doing a great job.
I do too, and I think that's one thing to not lose sight when we're having going back and forth a little bit.
Unlike Democrats, though, we have these out in the open.
Yeah.
We fought, we have the family discussions and debates. Democrats do this in like weird, creepy corners.
It's a happy vibe here at the Turning Point Student Action Summit. Congrats again, Charlie, and we're happy to be a part of it.
The great Alex Marlow. Thanks, man.